Remember those open-world games that almost made it? The ones that were amazing but didn't quite break into the mainstream. Today, we're taking a look at 10 open-world masterpieces you've probably overlooked. Starting with the game that grows on you the more time you spend with it. Like a fine wine, Days Gone requires time to fully appreciate. It doesn't burst onto the scene, but rather unfolds its complexities and strengths with each passing hour. You're riding around on your bike, scavenging for stuff, doing missions for these survivor camps, and just trying not to get eaten. And that bike, it's everything. It's not just a way to get around. You run out of gas, you're walking, it gets busted up, you better have some scrap to fix it. It makes even simple trips feel tense, you know. The world itself, it's beautiful but brutal. Think Pacific Northwest, but everything's ruined. It's wet, it's dangerous, and the weather changes, which actually matters. Freakers are way worse at night, and rain makes the roads slippery. And the hordes, forget about it. You see one of those early on, you're running, no question. And the combat, it's not a walk in the park. You're always scrounging for ammo, looking for melee weapons, unlocking recipes to upgrade that gear. Because if you don't, those melee weapons, especially early on, they're weak, they break easily, and it's kind of frustrating. But once you get the hang of it and you're upgrading, it's actually really fun. The game's long, like 30-40 hours for the main story, and way more if you do everything. And it keeps you hooked with all the upgrades. Every little thing makes a difference. And trust me, when you hear that first horde, you'll get it. Imagine, you've always wanted to explore Tokyo, but not just any Tokyo, like a Tokyo after some crazy apocalypse. But instead of the usual rubble and zombies, it's all ghosts, yokai, and those supernatural horrors you hear about. That's basically Ghostwire Tokyo. It's seriously special because it nails that eerie, atmospheric vibe, and the visuals are just wow. And the combat, it's like you're playing an FPS, but you're also Doctor Strange, throwing out these cool magic spells. It's got its quirks, but the whole experience, that feeling of being totally alone in this haunted Tokyo, it's something else. So you're an exorcist in an open-world adventure. You get dropped into Shibuya and poof, everyone's gone, replaced by spirits and these hostile visitors, these ghost enemies. You get these elemental, ethereal weaving powers. Think of them as magical hand signs, so you're slinging fire, wind, and water. You can also zip around rooftops using spectral tengu, like a grappling hook. The city is dense, atmospheric, and packed with detail. And you can even pet ghostly dogs. Seriously, they lead you to treasure. If that concept grabs you, you'll find something special in this game. I'll just start by saying this. If you were absolutely hooked on Shadow of Mordor, then Shadow of War, it's like they took everything from that first game and turned it up to 11. The Nemesis system is deeper, the combat is more refined, and the world is larger, but it's also kind of bloated. They threw in a bunch of RPG stuff that feels a bit unnecessary, and there was this whole loot system thing that was kind of messy. They fixed it later, though. It's an ambitious sequel that sometimes stumbles under its own weight, but when it works, it delivers some of the most satisfying open-world combat and dynamic storytelling in gaming. What I love most about this game, though, is that every single encounter with an orc has the potential to turn into this epic, unique story. The Nemesis system conjures up these orc characters, each with their own quirks, strengths, and weaknesses, almost like they've got their own little personalities. And they remember you. If you beat them, they might hold a grudge. If they beat you, they'll gloat and climb the ranks. It's like you're building these unique rivalries, these personal stories, that you just don't get in other games. It's an open-world action RPG, like think brutal combat, kind of like the Arkham games. They really pushed the Nemesis system, letting you recruit orcs, betray them, make rivals, and then there's the whole fort sieges thing, and all those RPG elements with gear and skills. You know, just a ton of unpredictable moments. Next up, we've got Sherlock Holmes Chapter 1. Now this one's a really interesting game, trying to shake things up with the whole open world concept, you know? As a huge Sherlock fan, I went in hoping for that totally immersive detective experience. And honestly, it's a bit of a mixed bag, but in a good way, mostly. They're taking us back to Sherlock's younger days, giving us this origin story set in this beautiful Mediterranean city called Cordona. And it's all about digging deep, you know, like really digging into the clues, figuring out the puzzles, you're gathering evidence, questioning people, piecing everything together in this mind palace, which is a seriously cool mechanic. The detail in the buildings and characters is mostly impressive. But, and this is a big but, some of the animations are a bit stiff, and certain character models just feel dead. It can pull you right out of the immersion. But despite those hiccups, the game does a lot of things right. They don't baby you either. They let you make mistakes. You can actually accuse the wrong person, mess up your deductions, reach totally wrong conclusions. And you know what? That's what makes it so engaging. It makes your choices feel like they actually matter. It makes you want to play it again, see what would happen if you'd gone down a different path. And honestly, I kind of love that. Next up, we've got this game that just straight up throws physics out the window and replaces it with pure, unadulterated chaos. I'm talking about a game where you're constantly grinding, bouncing, wall running, and air dashing across the whole damn city. The entire traversal system. Feels like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and Jet Set Radio had a baby and then fed that baby 1,000 energy drinks. That's Sunset Overdrive. It's like a neon-drenched explosion of color, style, and just over-the-top mayhem. It's Insomniac games at their absolute most unhinged, delivering an experience that doesn't take itself seriously for even a second. And honestly, that's exactly why it works so damn well. And the combat, just as over-the-top as the movement. You're armed with this arsenal of completely ridiculous weapons. I'm talking Ratchet and Clank levels of crazy creativity. You've got a gun that shoots explosive teddy bears, TN Teddy, a weapon that launches vinyl records, high fidelity, and my personal favorite, the Flaming Compensator, a totally ridiculous-looking shotgun that just incinerates enemies. The absolute variety and absurdity of these weapons makes combat a freaking blast. For me, Sunset Overdrive was a breath of fresh air. It's a game that just embraces fun above all else. It's loud, it's dumb, and it's absolutely brilliant. Everyone, at some point, you've played an open-world game. Those games where you're just wandering around, doing quests, maybe shooting some bad guys, and you've had that thought, like, I wish I could just level this whole building with a sledgehammer. I'm talking buildings, bridges, the whole shebang. Well, guess what? Red Faction, Guerrilla. It lets you do exactly that. Seriously, it's like they built the game around this crazy idea of what if everything could explode. You play as Alec Mason, this miner on Mars, and you're fighting the Earth Defense Force. But not just with guns. Oh no. You've got a sledgehammer, explosives, rocket launchers, basically a full-on destruction toolkit. You can take down buildings brick by brick, and the physics, insane. Like you smash a support beam, and the whole thing just comes crashing down. The sound of that destruction, pure satisfaction. And honestly, it's not just mindless smashing either. You're a rebel, hitting them where it hurts, blowing up their bases, and then dipping out before they catch you. And yeah, the story's not exactly Shakespeare, and the driving's a bit clunky, and the AI can be a little, wonky. But honestly, who cares? The destruction is the star of the show. Seriously, Red Faction Guerrilla was kind of overlooked when it launched, but it's still one of the best destruction-based games ever made. This game, it got totally overlooked, and that's a crime. Before I even fired it up, I knew it was something special. It's proof that when developers have a clear vision, they can turn a regular open-world game into something way more. It gets the primal allure of the wasteland, translating that into a world that feels both vast and oppressively lonely. It's way cooler than people give it credit for. Playing Mad Max is a blast. It's all about driving, but not just driving, like wrecking stuff while driving. You turn your car into a war machine, and that's the whole point. It's not just a ride, it's your main weapon. You feel the weight of the car, the impact of every hit. It's raw and brutal, and you're using tactics, not just smashing into things. The melee combat is brutal too. Heavy punches, headbutts, all that. It's slower than something like Batman Arkham, but it feels more impactful. Every hit feels like it has weight behind it. The game's developers, Avalanche Studios, didn't just create a static playground. They crafted a living, breathing wasteland where survival is a constant struggle. It's not some super deep story or anything, but the whole car combat and wasteland vibe is just super fun. It's a shame more people didn't play it, because it's a really unique or bad timing. It's not perfect, but it nails the feel of the Mad Max universe, and that's all I wanted. The Shenmue series is a legendary yet polarizing franchise that pioneered open-world exploration, cinematic storytelling, and life sim mechanics long before they became industry standards. Originally released on the Sega Dreamcast, it was a technical marvel ahead of its time, but its slow pacing and niche gameplay mean it's not for everyone. For fans, Shenmue is a deeply immersive experience filled with detailed environments, living NPCs, and a story of revenge and destiny. The first Shenmue, that was the birth of open-world gaming, really. You're Ryo Hazuki, trying to find out who killed your dad, this Landy guy. You're walking around 1986 Yokosuka, Japan, just living his life, doing detective work, training your martial arts. It's got open-world exploration, NPCs with realistic schedules, time-sensitive story progression, those QTEs that everyone uses now, mini-games, and combat inspired by Virtua Fighter. It was groundbreaking, but it's slow and requires patience. Think about it. Back on the Sega Dreamcast, it was a technical marvel, absolutely ahead of its time. But, and this is a big but, it's slow, like really slow, and the gameplay, it's niche. It's just not going to be everyone's cup of tea. Then there's Shenmue 2. It takes you to Hong Kong, and it's bigger, more NPCs, deeper combat. The story gets more intense. You meet Ren and Shenhua and keep chasing Lan Di. It improves on the first game, more side activities, more freedom, better pacing. And then, after 18 years, Shenmue 3 came out. Nostalgic, but flawed. Beautiful environments, the Shenmue charm is still there, and the martial arts training is expanded. But the story barely progresses. The combat is clunky, and it's grind-heavy and repetitive. It feels like a side chapter, not a real sequel. But even with all that, Shenmue one of a kind. You have to play it to really get it. It's a journey, something you won't forget, even if it drives you a little crazy. Next up is the game that takes the eerie 80s vibe of Stranger Things. Then you throw in the relentless mechanical terror of the Terminator, and you set the whole thing in the beautiful yet unsettling Swedish countryside of the 1980s. Then you get Generation Zero. It's an open-world, multiplayer shooter that's just oozing with this incredible atmosphere, like seriously chilling tension, and these robot enemies that just don't quit. You're dropped into this completely deserted Sweden, where all these robots have either wiped out or taken everyone. There's no big cutscenes or anything. You're just left to figure out what happened by exploring, finding notes, listening to audio logs, and checking out these ruined settlements. The combat is super tense because these robots are no joke. They patrol, they call for backup, they flank you. It makes every fight feel like a real struggle, especially early on when you're running low on ammo. The world is huge, but it can feel empty. You get this sense of mystery from the clues you find, and exploring with friends is fun. And here's the thing, it also gets bogged down by gameplay that can feel really repetitive, environments that feel kind of empty, and a progression system that doesn't really give you that satisfying feeling of getting stronger. Look, if you like games like DayZ or The Forest, give it a shot. But if you need a strong story or deep RPG mechanics, maybe skip it. For me, Generation Zero is best played with friends. It's got this unique, haunting charm that makes it worth experiencing, even with its flaws. There's just something about Sable that really stuck with me. It wasn't like those other open-world games where you're just running from one map marker to the next, ticking off boxes. This was different. Nobody was telling me what to do. There were no enemies to fight, no pressure. It was just me, exploring, figuring out puzzles, and taking it all in at my own pace. It really made me slow down and just appreciate the journey. And the art style, it's like something out of a dream. Those bold lines, those soft colors, those surreal landscapes, deserts, old ruins, floating rocks, these strange little settlements. It all felt so futuristic, but also so connected to nature. And the music, that Japanese breakfast soundtrack, perfect. It's soft and emotional, and it just makes you feel like you're discovering something truly special. If you're into games where you just explore and get lost in the world, or if you just love those artistic, emotional experiences, you've got to play Sable. That wraps up our list of 10 open-world masterpieces you've probably overlooked. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss out on our gaming content. I've got plenty more recommendations and reviews waiting for you, so make sure to check out my other videos on the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.